It's time to spotlight the AI space. Joining us now, I'm pleased to say, is Steven Dickens, the CEO and principal analyst at Hyperframe Research, and we're throwing a spotlight on Dynatrace earnings. I mean, what were your takeaways, particularly given that we're starting to get the nuts and bolts of this whole AI theme, and this was really focusing on the software component of that. So what are your thoughts?
So I think the key takeaway from me was fantastic growth for Dynatrace this quarter, up over 20 at about 20%, which is starting to show for me how AI is moving beyond some of the things we're talking about that capture the public attention, creating images, chatbots, and really shows up in some of the IT operationalization. So strong revenue for the company. We're showing it here on the screen at 477 million. I think what that shows is the market's moving beyond the traditional monitoring and alerting that we've seen from Dynatrace for years into this full end-to-end observability play. What they're saying, and I think the impact for me for the market is this is going to start to show up in IT operations. Some of these large organizations, the banks, the telcos, the retailers, they've got huge IT staffs. And what we're seeing with AI starting to come through, particularly from the likes of Dynatrace and from others like ServiceNow and Cisco with their Splunk acquisition, we're starting to see some of the big names bring this AI through into their operational software, and that's having huge impact on operational execution for other industries outside of tech.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you believe that this is an example of perhaps show me proof of all that spent, given all the big numbers that, the Microsofts and the Metas of the world have been throwing out there this earnings season? I mean, is this sort of proof of some of that monetization as far as, how the consumer is looking at this?
Exactly. And so when you look at the likes of the names that capture all of the attention on your show and in the markets in general, we're looking for directional trends here. This is a mid-cap stock, still showing high growth. What's interesting for me is whilst the NVIDIAs and the AMDs, and to a lesser extent, the Intel, and then if you look at sort of AWS and Microsoft and Google that have all reported recently, those give big macro trends of where the AI trade is going. You look at somebody like Dynatrace, that gives you that next level down, that gives you that operational spend. So this is where enterprises are obviously spending more. One key takeaway from the earnings call this morning was the scale and size of the large deals. Dynatrace is seeing traction there. What this means to enterprises is automation, fewer staff, improved bottom line. So I think what we can see is this is a more granular view of that AI trend, how the spend is happening across the industry, and also be able to see how some of those operational savings roll out. And all that's being driven by agentic AI and operational AI that the likes of Dynatrace are driving.
Yeah, I like that sort of throwing a bit of a granular lens on some of these small to mid caps, particularly when, the race is on across the board. And so in that sense, as far as monetization is concerned and, some of the things that you're saying here about Dynatrace, where would you say that it's positioned in the pack as far as that sort of prove me sort of story here with regards to the CapEx?
So I think this is a pretty mature market. I think AI's come to this market in the last couple of years. You look at Dynatrace and the part of the business that Cisco's got that focuses on this. They've made a number of acquisitions in that space. The largest was the Blockbuster acquisition that closed for them around Splunk. Dynatrace is certainly one or two in each one of the key 6 markets that for functionality here. That's been validated by other analysts who do those types of comparative analysis. So Dynatrace definitely a leader. But I think one of the key things for me is just the increase in ARR. This is strong indicator for where that signal and that show me is. The company's was up to 1.822 million, sorry, 1.82 billion. That's showing an increase of 18%. Strong numbers. So I think what we're starting to see is the focus on metrics and traces that the company's had for years, but also that logs come through and how that's impacting security data. So this is really showing that business IT and that business observability starting to come through into the wider market. And as I say, a more granular signal of what we're seeing from the company as part of a sort of indicator for that overall AI trend to sort of augment what we're seeing from those mega caps.
Yeah, it certainly gives us a good sort of insight into where that sort of agentic AI trend is going. I'm just wondering, from the companies that we've heard of, from so far, I know we're yet to hear from some of the sort of smaller names to kind of give us a more sort of broader overview, but it does seem, and I've heard analysts talking about this, that we are seeing somewhat of a bifurcation here as far as, AI is concerned. I mean, particularly when you look at what some of the semiconductor companies are doing, particularly if you have, exposure to the autos and industrials, you're not sort of getting rewarded as much as perhaps if you're in more of the AI side of the business. So, I mean, what's your assessment overall of what we've been hearing from these companies as to where we're up to in the whole AI race?
So we're obviously starting to see winners emerge. We're a couple of years into this. I think what we're starting to move to is that the platform AI era. So we saw Palo Alto announcing its intention to buy CyberArk. We've seen Google acquiring Wiz. What we're going to start to see is, as you mentioned, a sort of bifurcation by those leaders to people who are kind of also runs in the pack. Dynatrace is definitely in that leader category, both at a functional level and then what we're seeing in the earnings today. So I think you're going to start to see consolidation. Enterprises are already looking to consolidate the numbers of tools. The CEO mentioned that on his earnings call today. They're starting to see deal size increase. They had 12 deals over $1 million of TCV in the quarter. That's a key indicator trend when we're starting to see the retention and the scale and size of those deals increase. So I think it just pulls us to this platform play. So I think as we're starting to look at this from a market's point of view, we got to be starting to back those winners. And Dynatrace is definitely one of those from the way I'm looking at this market.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Apple. I mean, it's hinted at M&A as well, particularly for the AI part of the business, which it's very much been seen as sort of behind the curve here. I mean, behind the eight ball as far as, pushing ahead with that technology. But, I suppose we can't talk about the AI trend, Steve, without talking about everything that's going to power it, the infrastructure. So what are you seeing as far as sort of the broader ecosystem is concerned? Where are the opportunities here?
Well, Dynatrace plays into this getting more from less, but just generally, the US has got to get ahead with nuclear. We've got to build out infrastructure. President Trump talked about that at the AI summit that he was at. What was that, last week or the week before? We need to continue to double down. What we're seeing is a complete re-architecting of the stack for AI. And that's everything from software companies like Dynatrace that we're talking about through the infrastructure players. I'm spending lots of time with HPE and Lenovo and those guys around what the implications of what that means for them within data centers. Spending time with Chuck Robbins a few weeks ago out at Cisco and how that's impacting what's going on from a networking perspective. All told, regardless of what we do from an infrastructure and software support, we're going to need more power. And the US has got to focus on that and drive ultimately a metric of kilowatt per token. How do we get more AI with efficient electricity generation?
Yeah, and I suppose that's why some of these big names have been turning to nuclear. And I mean, certainly that's a theme that's been picking up speed as well. Stephen, we've got to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Really useful analysis and insights today. Stephen Dickens, CEO and Principal Analyst at Hyperframe Research. Thanks so much.